Thank you everyone for joining. We have a great panel discussion, limited time, so we're going to dive right in. We set the scene to say the world of work has changed, the skills that we need are very different, and so we want to consider in this very dynamic sort of landscape that we have, what are the skills that we need and how can we go about creating a sense of belonging, a sense of human flourishing, in this digital world that we live in. So let me start off with Carla. Let's talk about some of the challenges at AstraZeneca and how you're working in this digital space, this back to work, and the challenges you're facing in creating belonging.
Yeah, I think that depending on the sector, maybe it could be different challenges, but there are some common challenges, no? And after the pandemic, I think that all of us knows that we need to readapt ourselves because everything has changed. And we as a company, we have been recognized a couple of weeks ago as the best company by Forbes for working in Spain. And we are really proud about a lot of measures we have put already in place. But we need to continue evolving because people is constantly changing and the skills we need now are not the ones that we are needing in the future. And we need to be able to see this and adapt this learning agility, this curiosity that we need in our people, no? And we need to adapt the environment and the ecosystem for being able to offer a great place to work to all the employees that are part of AstraZeneca.
I'm going to jump to Margot because Margot works in a totally different space, completely online or remote working system, and she's responsible for creating community. So maybe you can share with us.
Yeah, of course, my pleasure. So yes, we're fully remote. We have people in over 80 different countries. And so the role of engaging people, many tech workers, so like developers, designers, project managers around the world, it is certainly maybe something that 5-10 years ago would have seemed really daunting. We're talking about it more now, of course, with the rise of remote work. But some main principles I can kind of hit on is really people need a very clear identity to start with. That identity leads to trust. So a really easy example there is like values, really having very clear company values of how you expect people to show up every day to your business because they're not physically in person, right? So that having that clear identity builds trust. Having trust builds participation. Think of the example of like there's an empty room and you're expecting your team to walk in it and do something great. Well, that's just not going to happen, right? They need to be like have this clear invitation to participate. It's the same online. If you have a Slack community or Telegram or whatever you use, Microsoft Teams, whatever you use to connect your team, if you have channels where you just say, well, my team's not communicating well enough in there, did you invite them clearly to participate? Did you have a clear sense of what they were supposed to do in the first place? Like there's a ton of tangible tips we can get into, but identity, trust leads to participation, and then you can reward people for participating, even if that's like a thumbs up emoji in your Slack, right? Reward them for the things you want them to do, shows that they're going to get that identity again, and it's a really nice cycle.
And so we see a lot of combination here on the digital skills, but we're also highlighting how we have our own internal bias that comes up of what is expectation around communication. What is the expectation about how we are engaging and working together? And we make some assumptions. And so, Maria, maybe you can share that from the digital side, the assumption is now we need to educate everyone in terms of digital skills. And it's not just the employer, but how are these digital skills prominent in order to help us to work in this new environment?
Yeah, of course. I totally agree that we have to be focused. Leadership has to be focused on must take human-centered approaches. It is important to have this, foster this employee belonging at the workplace. And also, you can manage that as if you improve the well-being of the people and you care for that. So leaders has to be centered in people. But of course, with this change, I mean, we have talked again and again many times about what the COVID-19, the crisis we suffered in 2020 meant for us as citizens and also as employees. So many companies were more prepared. Many companies have had all the collaboration tools in place. They have had the time. They have carry out a management change plan in a scheduled basis, but other ones didn't have that possibility. And in fact, they have to challenge many SMEs to deal with digitalization and also to provide with the digital competencies that all the employees require. So, of course, leaders have to focus on the needs of the person, of the people. We have this, let's say, new online hybrid workplace, And of course, there are many things to take care of. Many skills, emotional skills, we were saying. And of course, we have the leaders, the managers have to take care of the digital health of the employees, but also all the new skills that are required in this fully digital life that we are right now living. The ones that they go beyond digital skills, of course, but I think that digital skills are the lever. They are going to be the support to provide the skills that we need to solve problems, to carry out informed decisions. So I think it's really important to focus on that, because otherwise, if the citizen or the employee has not that tools, then it's going to find this barrier. So how are you going to foster belonging to the place?
Exactly. So people aren't able to access. They feel excluded because of their lack of skill development or the lack of capability to connect and to be in that type of new workforce. But what that brought up was, in this new dynamic, there are these assumptions and there are the experience that we bring in, and it creates a lot of discomfort, uncertainty, and with that, oftentimes a lot of fear. And we said, how are we overcoming that sense of fear? And so Ruchika comes from a really great background from Google and years of experience in well-being learning. And I thought your response was really important to say, but even before we connect with others, we need to connect with ourselves. So maybe you can elaborate more.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think what we found from doing the work around well-being at Google and belongingness is that, people had to have the self-awareness of who they are first. What are their needs and what are their own resources that are available to us, which is not just the basic resources as like the food, water, shelter, and financial needs, but also the level of connection that they're looking for with each other, and the sense of identity, the sense of validation that you belong to this community, to your family, to your work environment. And that's where we implemented programs on developing self-awareness first. Our marquee program, Search Inside Yourself, is world-renowned, and we actually spun it off into an external company that brings programs to all around the world. I was just talking to Carla about that as well. And the premise of the program was to develop emotional intelligence. And the emotional intelligence essentially is built on self-awareness first. It is basically recognizing who you are, what are your emotions, making friends with them, not ignoring and bypassing or numbing those emotions, but really being present with them and working with them. Tell me, like, anybody raise your hand, like if you've never felt anger in your life or sadness. Never? Not really. Or sadness, or happy feelings and good emotions as well. So this is kind of part of all of us, but we usually numb it. We don't show it, we don't express it, or we don't talk about it in work environments and family systems. And guess what? That actually affects our authenticity, and that affects the psychological safety that we create when we work in project-based, team-based environments. So I always invite everyone to really look into yourself, and that's why we called it Search Inside Yourself. And then, build skills to connect with others from that space.
And it's really important to see how intertwined these are. So oftentimes we focus on new way of working, technology, of course, this is fantastic. And even if we have those skills, yet when we have a different type of working environment, we're losing something that we don't realize is how fundamental, which is human connection, and how we can create that within a digital space. So maybe, Margot, going back to you.
I always find it so interesting when I hear a sentence like that, because since I've been at TopTal, which is a fully remote company, right, and there literally have never been offices and there never will, I have felt so connected to my peers more than maybe ever before in person. And if you can't already tell, I'm pretty extroverted. So that's really interesting, right? You would think that there would be this feeling of being held back in some way. But I think, again, with TopTal, our values are so clear to everyone who comes into the company. We even have a culture interview that some people don't pass because we know that they just won't thrive in that environment. So we actually have ways of kind of checking for that. But when those values are really clear and you know how to show up and there's parameters around how we use our tools, that ability to connect with other people is still totally there. And I can give like some little tips for people going, okay, but how do you actually do that, right? Like, okay, I have my team and we're all over the place and I feel like I do a coffee thing and no one shows up, right? I get asked that question all the time. So I think the first thing is like commit to the fact that you are virtual. Even if you have a hybrid and things like that, you can't do like we're doing a lunch in person, but we'll also send you lunch at home. Great. But like maybe just send everyone lunch at home and have those other people also be home that day, which seems counterintuitive, but then everyone's on the same playing field. If you're remote entirely, and again, you're saying something like people aren't showing up to my call, don't do it every week. Like if you have something like a coffee break where people show up to the call every single week, people easily think, oh, I can just skip that because there's another one next week and it's not mandatory anyway, and I'm busy, and I want my boss to make sure they know I'm busy, so I'll go another week. Maybe just do one a month and make it clear that that one a month is your opportunity to take a break. And the boss should even tell you, I want you to feel like you can take a break. Go to the call. I think it's a great way to meet your peers. But if you really don't want to meet your peers, please don't work still during that half an hour. Like, give them that permission. A big thing of community building, too, is giving people permission to participate in the ways that you want them to, because otherwise, again, it's like that empty room example. They're going to find a reason to not go to that thing that is good for their mental health and well-being. You want them to connect with each other. So it's like sometimes it's being very purposeful about those, even the fun interactions. One more example, same with like a Slack channel or wherever you do your chat at work. If there's a fun channel where you want people to share pictures of their last vacation or share, something fun, pictures of their kids or whatever, you have to really instigate first. You can't just say, this channel's for fun, go have fun. As the leader, or a few of you, get a couple people on your team, get them to share pictures for a little while, and before you know it, you can step back and they'll be doing it themselves. Yeah. So have you had this experience?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Definitely. Thank you for sharing that.
So we have to walk the talk.
Yeah.
And so there's a dynamic. We've seen that Gallup always talks about engagement. And post-pandemic, they've really brought in what is thriving well-being. We're seeing worldwide, according to the last report, was 33% are saying we have thriving well-being. Thriving well-being leads to engagement, leads to organizational success. And so what we see here is this ecosystem dynamic, right, of walking the talk that I need to be in a good space to be able to care for others, going to the domains of emotional intelligence. Yeah. First, self-awareness, self-management, to be able to empathize and create this cultural awareness, conflict management, teamwork, etc. So we have these both parts that are really critical. So in AstraZeneca, how are you doing this? You're very different from Toptel, that they're fully remote, and that's like the rules of the game, to traditional company that post-pandemic is trying to navigate this new way of working. What are the behaviors that you're expecting to see, and how are you creating a culture that is prioritizing flexibility with human development and connection?
I think that the key word at the end is being able to balance. Different realities for sure, but I think that we have a common challenge, that is to try to create this psychological safety environment that allowed us to be ourselves. Mm-hmm. Each of us is different. Mm-hmm. And each of us, we have different strengths, different ways of being in the daily work, different competencies, and the idea is to create this ecological safety for development, for giving opportunity to the whole population. Mm-hmm. And at the end, we are trying to balance new generations that are asking for a proposal, that are asking for work-life balance, that are asking for career opportunities now, with other generations that also put in value to attend to the office, to have a common objectives, a common development path. So at the end, we need to create. We need to crash with the daily thinking, and try to create different proposals, attending different needs from the people. The psychological safety, we also talk about leaders. For us, it's key how the leader is managing the teams, how we want to create this future leader that will allow us to continue growing as a company.
Mm-hmm. We recently had a conference talking about mental health and well-being in the workplace, and the question was about leaders, and said, are they walking the talk? Are they caring for themselves? Because leaders are the ones who set the conditions for creating psychological safety, right? So Ruchika, maybe you can share the Aristotle project came, number one, psychological safety is fundamental in teams, especially in an innovative environment. So how do companies go about developing leaders or creating a culture that prioritizes psychological safety?
Yeah. I don't know how many of you know about the Project Aristotle. I'll give a quick 30-second on it so we're all on the same page. We did a study at Google, studied 200 teams very closely to see what makes them successful, not just in terms of like working along with each other and leading, but also really the bottom line impact on who gets the work projects out of the door or revenues increased over time. And what we found was the number one criteria was not where you come from, which university you went to study at, or what's the number of years of experience you bring into the work, but really the psychological safety that you feel with each other. And psychological safety is defined as like you can actually be vulnerable with each other in the moment of hardship and say, I'm going through a breakup in a relationship, or my child is sick and I can't be fully present, or any health issues you may be going through, or I'm really feeling challenged about this project and there's a whole new growth curve going on for me. And if you can share that in your team, the chances are that people are able to support you better, and that creates a psychological safety. So it's like a two-way road where you feel the safety and you share more, and it creates more deeper safety with each other. And the idea here is like when you have that, it also directly impacts your health and well-being, because you're able to take a step back when you need to, and you are able to actually pitch in more when you have more resources and everything else is working out in your life. So those are some of the dynamics of the Project Aristotle study, and there's a lot of information out there, including models and exercises that you can actually take. It's all freely available on open source websites of Google, and start applying some of those into your organizations as well.
Thank you. Fantastic. So we hope you will take advantage. We know the practice is the hardest part.
Yeah.
And so from one side is what is the company or the institution doing to create that culture and prioritize psychological safety? But then also, as a key takeaway from this moment, what can we all do to bring our best self into the workplace, knowing that that's changing, knowing that that can be uncomfortable and can create a lot of discomfort or negative emotions that we can embrace and move through. So maybe, do you want to share a little bit about, from the digital space, what we can do to step into those challenges, or how you would approach it from a broader individual audience?
Yeah, thank you. Well, it was quite nice sharing the information about the project. I'm sure that there will be many things to learn and put in practice that will help all of us. Well, regarding digital skills, regarding how comfortable you go when you work to work, when everything has changed, all your environment, and you face a new reality that, sometimes, in some cases, you are ready for, but in other ones, you need these new skills. These new skills are required because now we are dealing in a totally different world, and also a different workplace. We have to collaborate through the technology. We have to meet our colleagues through technology. We need digital technologies, but apart from that, we need to be able to use them. So these new skills, of course, there are many soft skills, emotional skills that are required, but also the technical ones, and in particular, digital ones are also, I think, the base to be able to address all these challenges that we have to address. So there are, the European Commission has set the goal for all the member states that 80% of the citizens by 2030 should have acquired at least basic digital competencies. So it is something that all the countries, of course, Spain, and all the public administration have to work to get to that. Here in Spain, for instance, we have developed a digital model regarding the competency areas that are skills that you really need in your personal and your professional life. We are talking about that data literacy, collaboration tools, digital content creation, safety, problem solving. So in the end, there are different capabilities that you need in different performance levels. So there is San Juan, we developed with the help of the European Commission a questionnaire that will tell you what is your level and also will provide you with, let's say, a roadmap or different steps that you can take to improve. There are many universities, private sector entities, public sector entities, even citizens. So everybody there are many members involved to provide many initiatives that the citizens, the employees can use in order to improve, to gain these skills that are required as a first step to deal with this new reality.
Mm-hmm. So I think the key message is that this is part of the new reality.
Yeah.
How do we encourage people to feel comfortable stepping into that and continue learning? And from an academic institution focusing on lifelong learning, we're always challenging ourselves to continue learning. Margot, you're in a completely different space in that you have some of the top talent.
Right.
That you actually turn people away because they don't meet your model either technically or in terms of their behavioral skills and engagement.
Yep.
What would you say are some of the key characteristics of your top talent in terms of body, mind, and soul, and how they create, continue learning, and really are those top performers?
I mean, I wish I had like a perfect survey that gave me all this information, Lisa, but and
Don't we all?
what you're talking about, Maria, it's tough, right? Because all the examples I'm giving are assuming people are already really advanced in their tech skills, but it's an assumption we make in a lot of our society is not yet, so what you're talking about is really powerful. My examples, unfortunately, don't apply to that typically, but I think the really neat thing about top talent and talent marketplaces like ours, right? I was talking first about like we're fully remote, but the piece that I kind of didn't totally explain as well is that we're totally like our title says, today's talk, like project-based work where they're essentially like contractors. They're people who can work from anywhere with as much time as they want. They can set their profiles to, part-time or 20 hours a week or whatever it is, or full-time if they want to, and they have that flexibility. What we do is we take out all the like pieces of work that you might see as kind of like the burden pieces. So they're not having to find their own clients because they go through us to get them, the payroll piece, all that kind of stuff, like trying to source and you do accounts receivable, all those things are all through us. Where this ties in with what we're talking about is that then they can really focus on the work that they're truly passionate about, that like those developers, that project, that design they want to create, whatever it is, they can pick their projects, pick their clients a little more easily, focus on the things that they're really passionate about. And I think that in the end gives you that stronger mental health because you're also feeling more present in the things that you're doing because you have a little more like selection over it. Mm-hmm. I had this really great story, and I actually mentioned this earlier today to a different audience, but about women in tech, and we're all a bunch of strong women on stage here, that said that when they went into a remote environment, they felt like their mental health was a lot stronger because they could focus on their project, show up in the way that they wanted to, and weren't necessarily like in a room full of men in tech, because this, I'm talking often about tech environments. She was a developer. She didn't have to show up as the woman in tech every day when she was virtual, remote, and working from home. She had the ability to really just show up the way she wanted to, which was really focus on her project, really dedicated and passionate about the work she was doing. And then if she wanted to take up that cause, she could take it up when it made sense to her. So her mental health and well-being was significantly higher in this environment. So I think it's easy to talk about, earlier the statements of like, people from home, maybe they're lonely or whatever. If you look at these examples, though, there's some really great examples on the other side of the coin that I'm happy to share.
Absolutely. So we see how tech can really elevate and empower people and create an even working space, but it requires the skills to be able to feel comfortable in that. And then the counter side of how do we tap into, for example, passion or a greater sense of meaning, that I'm connecting with the work that I'm doing and I have the ability to focus, that I'm not scattered trying to manage egos or personalities or the different bureaucratic processes, that I can really just do that work, feel that I'm doing good work, and then enjoy my life as well and have that sense of balance that is really challenging to get to. So how do we transfer that in sort of the best case scenario of a fully remote environment where we're seeing people flourishing in this digital environment to learn the skills and apply it within a corporate environment that came from a very different history and place? So what could we do, and what are you doing at AstraZeneca that's focusing on creating that balance and well-being so that people are connecting with their meaning and really flourishing in the work that they do?
Well, at the end, we are really lucky because our proposal at the end is to save lives. So our employees are really committed with this proposal, and this is our framework. After that, we need to really be able to create this ecosystem that makes them feel comfortable. At the end, we have several employee resources groups that are part of volunteers that are part of the different departments, and they are creating value. We have really put in place different programs, set of generations, disabilities, mental health, cultural, different cultures in place. And the idea is to make that each one count to create this AstraZeneca culture. When we received this award of being the best company in 2023, it was because our employees has the feeling that they are working in a great space. Mm-hmm. And for this, we have already covered key concepts as leadership, as psychological safety, hard skills or soft skills. For sure, most of the hard skills could be acquired, but we need people with curiosity. We need people with learning agility. And without this, we are going to be lost.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So Ruchika, going to you, how do we, from an individual perspective, start cultivating curiosity, this learning mindset, the growth mindset, and helping to empower people to take ownership for their own well-being?
Yeah, I think we need to start from just the basic recognition that we are all multidimensional human beings, and there is no one size that fits all. We are at a very different stage of our life and conditions with our family, finance, all of those kind of needs. So even though we can come up with some standard definitions around well-being and health and curiosity, it can mean very much different to each of us, right? So, so that when we create programs and organizations, just having that fair recognition of there are 170,000 people in my organization, and if I create one program, that's not going to fit everybody's, need. Or even if I create 10, it's not going to solve the need. But I think it's a basic responsibility of an organization to do that. When I look at the way we framed well-being work at Google was at 3 different levels, and it truly resonated and actually helped us structure the work a bit. At the organization level, I love that your mission statement is save lives. And I know it means something different, being a pharma company, but at the same time, an organization needs to have a vision and a clear mission on what and an endorsement for well-being, and then walk the talk. The next level is at the leadership and the manager level. So, if you're managers in the company and leaders, you have to walk the talk and share that mission through your actions, not just through your words, but also create that psychological safety and space for people to practice, and let them tell you what they need, or let them take what they need in terms of time off or whatever they need. And finally, it's based on all the individuals. Well-being belongs to all of us, right? So it's not a responsibility of an organization putting it in the thesis and leaders walking the talk and whatever. If we all don't take it seriously, that I need to take my disconnected vacation, I don't want to be sending emails at midnight, and I want to show up, well and flourishing for others to also feel well and flourishing. I tell you, companies can spend millions of dollars on an employee well-being, and no needle is going to move. So it's up to all of us. So I just want to leave us with that framework to really reflect on what role do we play? Are we running an organization? Are we a leader? Or are we an independent individual contributor? And how do we contribute to each other's health and wellness?
Thank you, and thank you, everyone. So really, some key takeaways are that we are proactively trying to cultivate a culture of well-being that creates psychological safety at different levels of the organization, walking the talk, but how each and every one of us is responsible for well-being and bringing that into every engagement, how we show up. It's a real challenge here at South Summit to see the busyness and the energy that's happening, but then how can we embrace all of that and take a moment to pause and just reflect on what are our key insights and what actions are we going to put into place. And we encourage you collectively to say, in this new space, how are we going to commit to our own well-being and take even small steps, but working towards creating a culture that's empowering well-being for all. So thank you.